Mahabharata is the story of the descendants of King Bharat. After the death of King Pandu, the Mahabharata tells us his brother Dhritarashtra succeeded to the throne. Dhritarashtra educated the 5 sons of Pandu, the Pandavas, along with his own 100 sons. As they grew to be men, the Pandavas distinguished themselves by their character and heroic virtues. In consequences, Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra's eldest son, became jealous and planned to murder the Pandavas. Duryodhana planned to build a palace in a distant town and invite the Pandavas to stay there during a religious festival. The palace was made of specially inflammable materials so that Duryodhana's servants could easily set it on fire. The palace burned to ashes, but the Pandavas and their mother Kunti had been warned in time. They all managed to escape, and Duryodhana believed them to be dead. The Pandavas lived in the forest, disguised as Brahmins, meeting all kinds of dangers and adventures. One day, they heard that a neighboring king was to choose a husband for his daughter. The winner must bend a bow of enormous strength and hit a very difficult target. The Pandavas thought they would try. They went to the city in their disguise. Suitors had gathered from all over India, and Duryodhana was also among them. One after another, all failed in the test. At last, Arjuna, third of the Pandavas, stood up, bent the bow, and hit the target with the greatest ease. Draupadi, the princess, threw at him the victor's garland, but the assembled princes could not accept this humiliation at the hands of a poor and unwarlike Brahmin. There would have been a fight if Krishna, who was present, had not intervened and persuaded them that Arjuna had a right to his bride. Krishna was a cousin of the Pandavas and also the incarnation of Lord Vishnu. The brothers took Draupadi back to the forest, where their mother Kunti was awaiting them. "Mother," they cried, "we have brought home a wonderful treasure. Be sure to share it equally, my children." Kunti answered. Then she saw the girl and exclaimed in dismay, "Oh, what have I said?" But it was too late. Her words were sacred to her sons. So Draupadi married all the brothers together. Dhritarashtra and his sons now knew that the Pandavas were not only alive but also married. Duryodhana wanted them dead, but Dhritarashtra wisely listened to the advice of his uncle Bhishma, which was to send for the brothers and offer them half of his kingdom. So the kingdom was divided. The Pandavas got the worst of the land, a wilderness along the Jamuna river. They cleared it, built a fine city, and crowned Yudhishthira, the eldest brother, as their king. Now, the 5 brothers lived in triumph and splendor, and Duryodhana hated them more than ever. His jealousy hatched a new plot for their ruin. The pious and noble Yudhishthira had a dangerous weakness for gambling. So Duryodhana challenged him to play dice with his clever uncle named Shakuni. Knowing that the king would feel bound in honor to accept, they played. Shakuni cheated Yudhishthira lost game after game, staking his brothers, Draupadi, and himself. All were now the slaves of Duryodhana's vengeance, subject to insult and cruelty, until Dhritarashtra intervened and insisted that they be set at liberty and their kingdom given back. But Duryodhana worked upon his father until he obtained permission for another dice match. The loser was to forfeit his kingdom and retire to the forest for 12 years. Then he must live for a year in the city without being recognized. If he was discovered, the term of exile would begin again. This game Yudhishthira also lost. So the Pandavas went back to the forest. They made a virtue of their misfortune, practicing spiritual austerities and doing many heroic deeds. When the period of exile was over at last, Yudhishthira asked for the return of his kingdom, but Duryodhana refused. Yudhishthira said he would be content with just one village for himself and for each of his brothers. But Duryodhana, in the insanity of his greed, would not agree even to this. The older members of the family tried to arbitrate, but failed. So war became inevitable. Neighboring kings were drawn into the quarrel until the whole of India was involved. Both sides wanted Krishna's help, and to both Krishna offered the same choice. Either they could have Krishna's army or they could have Krishna alone, as Krishna shall take no part in the fighting. Duryodhana chose Krishna's army. Arjuna preferred to take Krishna alone as his personal charioteer. The battle was fought on the plains of Kurukshetra, a sacred place of pilgrimage. It was here, just before the armies engaged, that Krishna and Arjuna had the conversation which is recorded in the Bhagavad Gita. The battle lasted for 18 days and ended with the death of Duryodhana and the complete victory of the Pandavas. Thereafter, Yudhishthira became undisputed ruler of India. He ruled for 36 years. The story ends with the pilgrimage of Draupadi and the Pandavas up the heights of the Himalayas to the abode of God. On the way, the queen and 4 of the brothers died. They were not sufficiently pure to be able to enter heaven in their human bodies. Only Yudhishthira, the royal saint, journeyed on, accompanied by his faithful dog. When they reached heaven, Indra, the king of gods, told him that the dog could not come in. Yudhishthira replied that if this was so, he would stay outside heaven too, for he could not bring himself to desert any creature which trusted him and wished for his protection. Finally, after a long argument, both dog and king were admitted. Then the dog was revealed as Dharma himself. This had been another test of Yudhishthira's spiritual greatness. One more was to follow. When the king looked around him, he found that heaven was filled with his mortal enemies, where he asked were his brothers and his comrades. Indra conducted him to a gloomy and horrible region, the pit of hell itself. I prefer to stay here, said Yudhishthira, for the place where they are is heaven to me. At this, the blackness and horror vanished. Yudhishthira and the other Pandavas passed beyond the appearance of hell and heaven into the true being of God, which is immortality.